Ladies and gentlemen, Big Ferry News.
Hey, kia ora e te whānau. Welcome to another edition of Big Hero News. Kia ora, Chewy.
Kia ora, Pat. I am
you-
looking forward to a very chill, mellow, and centered show tonight. I'm calm. I feel very calm.
Not for long. Are you vibing the? Are you going tank top? Or are we got the guns out? The sun's out, guns out.
What we have reached, Pat, is the incredibly itchy
Right.
part of the tattoo.
Yeah.
So I've just put on some tattoo aftercare that is very sticky, so I'm keeping my sleeve out of it. But yeah, also I look tough and cool.
We have got a really interesting show tonight. I've already had a conversation with Jan Tinetti today, so that's a pre-recorded interview, but there is some information in that interview that I would suggest no one else in New Zealand has thought of so far about school lunches, and potentially B, you might see some politicians tomorrow, if they deem it worthy enough, picking up on it and asking some questions of Mr. Seymour and Mr. Luxon. We're having a look at that tonight, along with also old mate Seymour giving Erica Stanford the double bird today when she was waiting for a meeting and he just refused to turn up, and then basically went, meh. So,
Pat, you've got a defender.
Well, I've joked around before that I've had a message from Erica, and I sent her one back today saying, okay, we all know this is bullshit. Why don't you come on and tell us about it? So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. And of course, Chewy, I don't know why this all happened today, but we've also got the announcement, the allegation that, what we know is $300 million has been set aside for the break fee of the ferries. So most people are assuming the break fee is going to be $300 million just to get out of a deal. And we find out that Mr. Peters is back talking to Hyundai about doing ferries again. So it's a fascinating show. So we look forward to spending the next 7 hours with you on tonight's show, talking about all these things. And of course, a conversation from this morning's News Talk ZB chat between Hosco and Luxo, where they decided to reveal how much nurses get paid. And I heard this number and I went, that doesn't feel right. That just doesn't doesn't feel right. So we contacted the NZNO and have President Anne Daniels coming up in just a couple of minutes to talk about, amongst other things, how much do nurses get paid? Because if the Prime Minister is saying, and I quote, $127,000, if that happened to not be the case, I think it would be important for us to know. So lots going on tonight. And of course, want to hear from you guys in the chat the whole time. And we'll get some of your chats up and around and, joining in with us as we join in with you. I want to also say huge thanks to all of our patrons. We're on a drive for 100 new patrons. We're at about 75-ish, and we've got to the end of this month. So I guess that gives us about 4 weeks to try and drive another 25 patrons through. Remember, we do appreciate all our patronage, but we also want to be responsible in this. We want to make sure you can afford it, and we would rather have you pitch down a Patreon level if you can stay with us for the year than pitch up and then find it a bit tough for yourselves, because that's not as useful, because we like to plan what's happening in 6 months from now. Patreon.com/Big Hero News, and we get some extra posts up there, etc. You can see that we're in the process of looking at some new beanies and some caps and some mugs and some enamel pins. They will all end up going on the merch store. If you've bought merch, other than if you've bought it today, and I see there's a couple of sales in today, including someone who must live in the deep south because they ordered 2 hoodies. That was all printed up today, and it'll get packed up in the morning. It'll be on the couriers tomorrow if you're expecting stuff. bhnshop.nz, we have hoodies, we have T-shirts, we have stickers, and I have a brand new sticker actually, and it's all been printed. I haven't got it up on here yet though. It's the We Are the Grassroots sticker has been made now as well. I've got it stuck on my door. I've got a photo on my phone. Maybe later on tonight I'll email it to myself and show you the new sticker as well. All right, Chewy, is there anything else before we get to the, I know everyone looks forward to it, the dulcet tones of Mr. Mike Hosking and our hairless leader, Christopher Luxon? Or are we there? Have we reached our moment?
No, I think we need to rip that Band-Aid, Pat. Let's kick on.
Is that like a healthcare term? Like, are you talking like medicine, ripping the Band-Aid? Is that what it is?
Yep. Band-Aid off, kick the pig until it squeals. Let's see what famously onto it broadcaster Mike Hoskins has to say.
All right. Welcome to the show from the NZNO, the New Zealand Nurses Organisation, the President, Anne Daniels. Anne, thank you for joining us today.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Anne.
Do we need to have any kind of official curtsy or anything for having the President on, El Presidente? Do we need to do anything to acknowledge your presence?
No, but some of my colleagues in the ED sometimes do a backwards salute, so I'm not sure what that's about.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that's about either. Gosh. All right. This is what we're going to do. We want to get your, you're obviously Dunedin based as well, and you've known Chewy from the odd protest here or there. Wouldn't mind getting some of your thoughts and feelings around what's happening in the health system at the moment in general. But there's something I heard today that I really would like you to speak to. So all of us are going to travel through time to about 13 hours ago when Mr. Mike Hosking was talking to Mr. Christopher Luxon about nurses. And when they start talking about how much nurses get paid, I have this nerve in the back of my neck. I call it my bullshit nerve. And my bullshit nerve went, but of course, I don't have the information, but you do. So let's have a listen to this conversation first, and then we'll get some information from you about their claim around nurses, because they make it sound like these nurses are all just whinging because they're on such a good wicket. That's the general vibe of this conversation. Here we go.
You put 17 billion into this, 2,000 extra nurses, and per head you're going backwards. What's the problem?
It's an insanely complex organisation. So, there's this narrative out there that we're cutting healthcare services. Absolute total rubbish. We're putting 17 billion more on top of the 28 billion that already goes in. The second thing is, if you just take nurses, people say, oh, we're cutting nurses. No, we're not. We've actually added 2,000 nurses in 1 year. Nurses pays up 70% since 2014.
That number you gave yesterday, that's true. $127,000.
$127,000, including overtime allowances.
That's
equal
good money. You can't
Wales.
argue with that, can you?
That's the point I'm trying to make, is that, the narrative, and people need to understand. And let's be clear, we're up against unions, and we're up against people who are trying to say everything we're doing is rubbish in healthcare, and it's just not true. When we've actually increased remuneration for nurses to 127,000, including their allowances, including overtime, that is on a comparable level to what you get in New South Wales, and yet New South Wales is 35% richer than us. So, there is some good progress made on workforce recruitment and remuneration. There's good progress on funding. There's plenty of money in the system, but we're not getting the results, and we're not getting what patients want or need. So,
right. Is Levy doing that for you? Is this where Brown comes in, and Brown doesn't have faith in Levy or whatever the case? I mean, is this being fixed or not? Because at the end of the day, we all want good health, but there's got to be a limit. I think you're right. At $30 billion in total, I mean, how much is it? I mean, it can't be a bottomless pit.
No, but there's enough. What I'm trying to say,
unlike reimbursements to landlords and tax breaks, that can be bottomless. Sorry, I digress.
With those things I announced yesterday in my opening remarks, was to get people to understand there is enough money. There is actually progress on the workforce front. That's pretty impressive. And actually the issue is a system that's actually grossly bureaucratic and highly inefficient. And so putting Lester Levy in as a commissioner has been very important. We've obviously got changes of the CEOs and the Director General of Ministry of Health. That's really important. But we now want this organisation focused on patients. We want everything to be patient first. And so you can talk about the money, you can talk about remuneration, you can talk with unions as much as you like, but at the end of the day, the New Zealanders need to get access to doctors. They need to be able to see faster wait times for first surgeries, for first specialist appointments, for emergency departments. Those things are the things that matter. So let's make the organisation focus on customers or patients, which I think is, I know some of the media can be customers, but I don't care. I mean, these are service organisations that need to deliver for patients and for customers and for Kiwis. So,
okay.
Yeah. No, I don't mind the idea about using customers for patients, Chewy, because then we get to say to him around school lunches, how are you treating those customers? But that's another conversation for another day. And A couple of claims they made. They are not cutting healthcare. They are injecting $17 billion more, and they've employed 2,000 new nurses this year. Before we get to the money, how do those three statements fit with your reality?
They're not cutting nurses. That's, as he politely put it, absolute rubbish. I've been meeting with the chairs and the leaders of the colleges and sections in the NZ&O today, and there were tears in the room because of the shared stories of the horrendous cuts, vacancies not being filled, and the impact on the patients that we're actually caring for, because we just simply do not have enough nurses to provide the timely standard of care that we should be doing. One nurse who was representing the NICU to look after the tiny babies said that she turned up to shift the other day, 5 nurses down. Now, they get sent nurses, but these nurses have never worked in NICU. They have no idea what to do, and it doubles these experienced expert nurses' workload when they're already 5 nurses down. And what does that mean? That's really impacting on the patients, and things are starting to go wrong. People are getting hurt and harmed because of it.
Are you guys just being big meanies to the Prime Minister? Because he said he's up against the unions and like that everyone's believing your narrative. Are you just being a bit nasty to him?
I don't think it's in any nurse's DNA to be nasty to anybody, quite the opposite, to be perfectly frank. And if he uses language about being up against us, I don't know how he can say that, because he never sees us, never talks to us. No, it's not happening. We're not even in the room. So he's sounding pretty pressured and worried and concerned. And I think that he is under pressure because he knows that the health system, the cost of a living, are the two big main worries in this nation. And the recent PSA survey made that very, very clear.
Right, let's get to not the only reason, but one of the main reasons I wanted to get you. Apparently, nurses on a pretty good wicket, $127,000. Is that true?
No, it's not. So, I'm an expert nurse. I work to the top of my scope in the emergency department when I actually pick up shifts casually. And let me say, my texts go off 3 to 5 times a day. And the words desperate, any hours, overtime are words that are used consistently for people to actually come in and help, because our patients are sicker. We don't have the gaps filled. It is just horrendous. So as the top of my scope, I am on 106,000 a year. Okay, so that's a full-time nurse in the hospital sector. If I was to get 127,000, I'd be one of the rare breed of clinical nurse managers or nurse practitioners. But they would have to actually do a lot of hours to actually get that.
So it'd be unlikely that it'd be on 127K for a 40-hour week, say?
Absolutely not.
He did say overtime, and he did say that was a part of overtime and any allowances. But are we what are we talking about? What kind of overtime? Is it like 20 days in a row overtime, or like what would get us to 127 out of interest? Because he's making it sound like that's what everyone's on.
Yeah. I'm really, really glad that you asked that question. So we did a few numbers, and we found that to get that, a nurse who's working full time would have to work 32 times 8-hour shifts, or 1 extra day every fortnight of overtime to actually get the kind of money that he's talking about. So this means that that nurse is working 11-hour shifts, or 1 day extra a fortnight over the 80 hours. It means that that nurse is tired and probably burnt out because of the horrendous hours they're doing. And if they're doing that, it actually shows how desperate our hospital system is to actually ensure that care is given in a timely way. And we know it's not. In the emergency department, 2/3 of the patients that turn up do not get seen within their triage times.
When you say 11 hours a day, what contract, what number of days per week? Is it a 5-day contract? Is it a 6-day contract?
Well, that can vary depending on which area you work in.
Right.
But in ED and in the wards, generally it's an 8-hour day. So that's an extra 3.5 odd hours on top of your normal contracted time. And as I said, we get texts all day long asking for people to come in. So, if we've got enough nurses in the system, and if they have recruited those nurses, and maybe they have, but they have gone. And we know they've gone because I've actually looked up the number of nurses that have registered to go and work in Australia, if you're interested.
I think we'd be bloody interested in that, to be honest with you, Anne.
Okay, well, in 2023 and 24, 12,000 New Zealand nurses registered to go and work in Australia, and that was a 53% increase from the year before. In 24-25, 19,600 registered to go to work in Australia.
Sorry, could you repeat that? Was that 19? 119?
19,600.
Wow.
So we've lost, hang on, that means we've lost more than 30,000 nurses, because 12 plus 19 is 31.
Yeah. When I will qualify my statement. When I say registered to work, that means they have actually made the decision to go through all the paperwork and the processes to register so they can hop over the ditch and work if they choose to. The government doesn't actually collect the information about how many nurses do leave. But I know they're leaving because they can't get jobs.
So to just go back one half step to the 127,000, what you're saying is approximately, to make $127,000, you would have to approximately work 1.5 shifts, because 8 plus 3.5 gets you to that 11
That's
hours.
correct.
So you'd have to basically work your normal full-time job, but rather than a shift, every shift would have to be approximately 1.5 times the length, and that would get you to somewhere in that 127K mark.
That is correct. And that is something the New Zealand Nurses Organisation, in fact, the research internationally and nationally state that if you work over 10 hours in a shift, you become so tired that you're more than likely to make a mistake. And that's when patients get harmed.
Chewy, you've done some work on this today. Do you want to jump in and share your thoughts?
Yeah, so when I saw that comment that basically just dangled the line out there that Luxon made it sound like most nurses were on easy 127,000, don't even worry about it. What a great job, great remuneration, all of that sort of thing. I reached out to a nurse that I know, and I mentioned this comment, and the noises that were made sounded like some sort of predator stuck in a drain pipe. It was rage. It was very, very primal. She did not agree. She gave me her pay band, which was very close to what you mentioned. And I asked her the question, what extra work, extra responsibility, extra hours would you need to do to get to this 127,000? And she said, I would have to do so much work that I would be useless and dangerous to people, which very much echoes what you're saying there. It's to be so blasé, so cavalier by mentioning people's pay band or supposed pay band. I think he's looked at a number that someone's pulled up of like, well, here's our highest paid nurse. And he's gone, got it. All nurses get that. Right, onto the radio. Without any sort of understanding. And I think this really plays to how Luxon looks at people in these sort of jobs, is he will only look at the managers, the people at the top of the field. He won't look at the averages. He won't look at what the majority of people get. And he has little to no understanding of what a hard job this is. I don't think there's anybody in the country that would go, nurses have it too easy. Look at them in their cushy job and their big fat wallets. The nurse that I spoke to, and I mentioned this a couple of times, is constantly stuck in this position of not only getting those text messages that you mentioned, can you come in, urgent, help, panic, but is also getting emails of, you have too much leave, you need to take leave request denied.
Yeah.
How long do people have to put up with this?
My
There's no
husband
help coming.
My husband was a nurse. He retired recently. He had so much leave that he was able to continue to be on the payroll for over 3 months before he actually finished work. That's how much leave he had owing to him. But getting back to the 127,000, it's actually worse than we've been focusing on the hospital nurses. So he said the average nurse. In primary healthcare, a registered nurse at the top of her scope will only get $90,000 a year, which is 18% less than a registered nurse working in the hospital. And that disparity is actually causing major issues in primary healthcare because the GPs are unable to actually be competitive to keep registered nurses in primary healthcare, which is where we need to keep them so that we can keep people well so they don't come into hospitals. The Prime Minister also mentioned the New South Wales. Now, the New South Wales state is the lowest paid state in the whole of Australia.
Of course
and it's
he does.
so badly paid. They have been on strike constantly for I don't know how long, but quite some time. And they are basically got a prime minister who's broken his promise to the nurses as well. So the New South Wales is not a good state for them to, for him to have compared. He should have tried Victoria or Queensland, who are much better paid than New Zealand nurses. And guess where our New Zealand nurses are going?
But that wouldn't maybe have suited his narrative quite so much. Hey, Anne, just before we say goodbye and thanks to you, current negotiations, where are we at? What's happening between nurses and the government at the moment?
I am so glad you asked that question. Why do you think Prime Minister Luxton said what he said? Because we are in the middle of negotiations. He's offered 0 to 1%, 1% being top over 2 years. Now that's a pay cut in any shape or form, but the main claim that we have in our negotiations is, guess what? Safe staffing. We need enough nurses. We are begging. The nurses are begging for more nurses so that we can provide the care to the patients that they deserve and need. And we're not thinking about ourselves. We're not thinking about pay. We're wanting more of us to actually provide the care and do it sooner, and so that people don't suffer any harm. And it is just absolutely horrible. So, he's completely wrong on
when Mr. Luxton says patient first, actually working with the nurses and getting this sorted out is actually patient first, but he's selling it as the nurses are taking us away from being able to focus on the patients, but actually helping the nurses is exactly what the patients need.
That is our biggest claim. We want legislated nurse-patient ratios that is culturally appropriate. That means being able to give time to the people that we're caring for, hear their voices and their stories so that we can get the care that they need right. But we don't have time for that. We're just running. Most nurses do about 15,000 steps in an 8-hour period. And I tell you, your legs are aching, your head's aching, and all you want to do is lie down and sleep. That is not what most people do when they've finished a shift. Yeah. There was a time 15 years ago that I could go home and go for a 10K run. Can't do it now. Not because I'm too old and too fat. But I wouldn't even dream of it because I'm too tired.
Yeah. Well, Anne, it's spectacular you giving us some of your time. Really do appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming on board. Obviously we want to stay over this, so please stay in touch. We will stay in touch with you and your team and your other supporters. As I said earlier, I messaged 2 or 3 of the sort of unions, and they all came back to me, and they said, Anne got in first, so we're talking to Anne. But it's, even though you may be different unions or different organisations, everyone's speaking with one voice as to what the nurses need and what the government needs to do. So thanks for your time today.
Yeah, all the unions are in exactly the same space. And at some stage, it would be great to talk about the hospital and the outpatient building as well. Okay, take care.
All right, thanks, Anne. All the best.
Cheers, Anne.
Right, Chewy, should we get some of these chats and super chats? I know you've started a few there.
Just before we do that, I do want to point out in this negotiation, the focus of the government will always be on pay. But whenever there is a negotiation, there is a reason why there are 2 things mentioned: pay and conditions. Those things are equally important. And it sounds to me, from what Anne is saying, that the nurses are really focusing on the conditions part of it. Yeah, they need more help, more people to pick up the slack so people can take their breaks and take their holidays that they need it. So everybody is refreshed and a more effective nurse. It's a force multiplier, is giving them the right conditions. I've been told that they're still waiting on holiday pay that was promised last year that hasn't been paid out. So I'm also very firm in the fact that if the nurses union asked for it, they could kick off a wave of nationwide support. There is no way that people would not rally behind nurses of all people if they called for a strike.
Very good. I think it's completely right as well. Mr. Arvid says, speaking of school lunches, we'll get to that shortly. Put the apple in the bag, bro, Luxon. Kiwi Bird says nurses should be paid as much as GPs. We've got Simple Reality at Mid-Central. Overtime has been cut on wards that don't have enough nurses to start with. A large number of open positions are not allowed to be filled. The Falconeer says, remember, policy says driving tired is worse than driving over the legal limit. So we want drunk, or effectively drunk, nurses treating people, ? Nanak says, my mother worked for Health Waikato for 40 years, and the amount of times I've had to pick her up the side of the road because she's just so exhausted she couldn't drive anymore. She retired just before COVID. We've also got Nikki No Growth. Graduate nurses can't find jobs, so we export. Yeah, that's shocking. 31,000 potentially, or certainly who have registered to go. And DIY says tax wealth more, fund health more. Tax wealth more, fund health more. Yeah,
that cycle that we seem to have found ourselves in of training people for a role, fucking them around, exporting, and then having to import skills seems just an incredibly inefficient, short-sighted way to run, by Luxon's own words, an insanely complex industry. Maybe he should remove some of this complexity.
I just think that the national-led government, Luxon's government, the Hydra, is that what they are? The 3-headed dog? Is it Hydra?
A Cerberus.
Are constantly under-delivering when they over-promise. Like so many things pre-election, so many things now. They are Cerberus. Thank you, Peter. So many things. They're whatever the opposite of hitting it out of the ballpark is, they're striking out. There you go. They're striking out with all of them. And that's why we need voices like Anne's. And, we're just a platform here to show some people, the door, and to show you guys to actually come on and go, yeah, that's not correct. Because you would have noticed zero pushback from Mike Hosking. I guess other than saying, is that number correct? And then the Prime Minister said, yes, that number's correct. Chewy is just doing a restart, I guess, super quick. So we've got some more chats there, so we can do it. Kooky Nick says, late fee, no new grad nurse roles in mental health in Wairarapa. Kiwi Bird, tax wealth for health. There you go. There's a nice one. Jeremy, thank you for your $20 super chats. Very generous. I think Anne and her colleagues are awesome also. I think she and her colleagues should be paid more. Yeah, I think that's probably the theme through the evening so far. All right, let's move on to our next conversation. The next conversation is around school lunches. I have some clips to show you that maybe we don't need to show you because actually 3 News did quite a good job on covering it. But there is a clip on Stuff where Seymour is being told by the Education Minister to come meet. There is, of course, this Marmite sandwich quote that you've had, but I actually think 3 News has done quite a good job sort of, I think their report's better than 1 News as well, sort of covering the whole thing. This conversation comes up in a couple of parts because there's a pre-recorded conversation that I have with Jan Tinetti as well, which we'll get to after this. Let's have a look at the conversation today around school lunches. One of the reasons I think this is better than 1 News's report is that they get a little bit more information out of Erica Stanford and David Seymour for him going, nah, couldn't make it, which is the ultimate slap in the face. And it makes us all question again Luxon's leadership. So if Luxon's got a minister who a leader of one of his coalition partners basically just flips the bird at, then what? We've always said the reason he seems to treat his ministers differently from, for example, ministers under ACT and under New Zealand First is because he doesn't have the ability to rein anyone in. So now the leader of one of those other parties, fascinating to see with what absolute disdain he treats Erica Stanford. Let's have a look.
On the government to urgently fix the free school lunches program after children received meals full of melted plastic. Christopher Luxon is expressing confidence that his associate educator...
He said to Luxon this morning, sorry, to Hoskings this morning, and I play the Hosking conversation to Jan Tinetti. He says, we're getting complaints every day, and he doesn't click to the point that means because there's issues every day. He's basically going, there's a complaint every day because there's a whinger every day. It's like, no, there's a complaint every day because there are issues with your system every day. That comes up in the next conversation.
Minister David Seymour can fix it. And if parents don't like it, the Prime Minister's solution, pack a Marmite sandwich.
Let them eat Marmite. Let them eat Marmite.
Senior political correspondent Jenna Lynch.
This is an inedible lunch.
Okay, just pausing that to have a look at. So you can see the black staining is the melting. So the plastic has melted into the food for the school lunches. And remember where we've gone from. We've gone from a lot of local volunteer groups, mums of the kids making lunches, to this. Melted plastic into the lunches. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to go, mistakes happen, yet this mistake doesn't happen when the mums are making it or when the local community kitchen's making it, because they make them and they walk them down the road and deliver them. This is the one, these are made because they're making 100,000 meals and they have to get them out as quick and as cheaply as possible. And this kind of thing happens. This is anti-quality control.
Intended for children at Murchison Area School, but contaminated with melted plastic from the top.
In a number of cases, that had melted into the top of the meal, into the, I think it was potato, it was all, that was horrible and very unsafe.
And tainted with burnt plastic from the bottom.
When some of the students got to the end of their meals, the black plastic had either melted completely with holes in it and had seeped into the food, or was burnt enough that it had seeped into the food as well.
Andy Ashworth raised the alarm. He hadn't heard back about the result of any investigation by the time we spoke to him today.
Pretty inadequate, to be honest.
But the company had the chance to brief the minister.
They overheated the oven, they set the wrong temperature. That led to the burning. There then was insufficient quality control to stop it being sent out.
It's really surprising that that kind of thing happens with an organisation that will give out as little as possible to make as much profit as possible, that they don't have the staff to keep an eye on quality control. It's really surprising. It's just really surprising how that would happen in a big group like Compass, you know? Because normally they're sending their meals off to prisoners and they probably don't have the same complaints because what else are the prisoners going to do? Yet in this situation, as they clip that $3 meal to be probably a $1 meal with $2 profits, they just don't have the money left over for quality control. Oh, you know, no big deal. Just plastic in your kid's lunch, that's all.
All of that has been investigated and clear instructions have been put in place to prevent it from happening again.
The plastic-riddled lunches are just the latest trouble in the problem-riddled school lunch program.
How many people had to have eyes on it for it to make it all the way to the school children with burnt plastic?
Well, you've got to bear in mind, there's 143,000 of these meals going out every day.
Well, hang on. Hang on. You can't say you got to bear in mind 143,000 of these, because what you're saying is, well, you know, we can't handle the volume. You guys have made this decision. So we don't have to bear in mind 143,000 because you changed the system. Remember? Better quality, cheaper. So you don't get to say bear in mind 143,000 lunches because you are the guys who set this up to be better quality and cheaper. So we will not bear in mind 143,000 meals because if you hadn't have changed it, it would have been 80 meals from the kitchen at the intermediate school, making it for their own kids. So no, you don't get as a defence now, oh, there's so many meals, Chewy. We can't keep control of all of them. That's the bag you've given yourself. Chewy?
I think the other question that goes with this is what's an acceptable amount of children eating burnt plastic? Because there must be a yardstick.
I guess so.
Right? Like what's the KPI on this?
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly blasé. Incredibly blasé. People wouldn't go to a restaurant that sometimes serves you burnt plastic. They just wouldn't. It's not acceptable under any sort of framework that there's an acceptable number of burnt meals or an acceptable number of times that, like, he was singing the praises of getting butter chicken 11 times in a row. As that was like, there's lots of people that would love 11 butter chickens. Fuck off. Like, he's not a serious person and he's taking this role of like, oh, it's such a tiny amount, or they're doing so many meals, but you're right to point out the things that he told us at the start of this was that it was going to be better for the taxpayer, there was going to be less wastage, they were going to be better meals than what they've got, and they were going to be expanded to more people. How many of those things has he failed us on?
And can we just say right now, this is the perfect time to remind Mr. Prime Minister. Mr. Prime Minister, who in the last conversation was talking about calling the patients customers, and that's okay because what you have to deliver. Well, if it's good for the goose, then how about these children who are your customers? What do you think of your customers getting the product which is food with burnt plastic in it? Mr. Roll-on deodorant salesman, Mr. Captain Daddy Business, what do you do for your customer who is getting lunches with melted plastic in them? Because I guess the one difference between customers and clients is clients tend to only have one option. Customers don't. So if you're going to call them customers, you should probably give them another fucking option as well. Just a thought. We'll keep going on this.
Seymour promised he could do school lunches cheaper, but the result has been subpar.
It's as simple as we've had a series of challenges. People said we couldn't deliver on time.
They seem that they were right about the things you promised.
We're now delivering on time 100% of the time. There's some complaints about some of the quality of the food. We're working to overcome that.
And the Prime Minister knows it.
Well, he's well aware of the issues and the challenges that we're seeing in some cases, but I've got every confidence he'll fix it.
See, the question, unfortunately, that no reporter then asked Chewy is, I've got every confidence that he'll fix it. What evidence do you have to give you that confidence, Mr. Prime Minister? Cite your metric that you're using to measure your opinion that gives you that confidence? What is it? Because none of us can see it. We're going to get to the bit with Erica Stanford now and the middle finger that David Seymour gave her today.
But I've got every confidence he'll fix it.
Confidence the Education Minister would not express when asked.
Well, that's why I'm meeting with him today, to find out what the plan is moving forward to make sure that the right child is receiving the right meal at the right time.
Erica Stanford and David Seymour were supposed to meet today.
I've asked David Seymour for a meeting this morning to go through some of the issues on the school lunch program to make sure that they are being cleared up.
But Seymour never showed. His meeting with ACT MPs ran overtime.
We have regular scheduled meetings. I think this one was scheduled 2 weeks ago and we'll now reschedule it. So we'll get there.
I was in my office just after 11 meeting with the President. You were there and he didn't show us. As I say, ministers' diaries change all of the time.
I've briefed the Prime Minister.
So you don't need to talk to the Education Minister?
Well, I will get to her.
That felt like a slap in the face to Murchison Area School.
Not listened to, and it really does make myself personally and our school community question the commitment from Mr Seymour to this scheme.
David Seymour's just doing his own thing. Christopher Luxon won't do anything about it. Erica Stanford's appearing to look tough and is basically being ignored by David Seymour. And actually the people who are suffering are the kids who are being served substandard meals, if in fact they get served a meal.
That's a really fair point from Chippy. There's one victim in this whole thing. It's the kids. Right, they're the ones missing out. I mean, you could reference the conversation around nursing. The people who are most impacted by are the patients or the customers, as Mr. Luxon likes to call them. Same here. It's the kids, it's the customers.
David Seymour has promised to get things turned around by the end of next month. 5 more weeks of children not knowing what's going to show up to eat.
Will you hand over the Food in Schools program to someone else if you can't fix it by term 2?
Look, if someone else was willing to take it, but frankly, this is a big challenge and I'm enjoying it.
And if parents don't like it, the PM's advice:
Of course, if you don't like the food, ultimately, you can make a marmite sandwich and put an apple in a lunch bag.
have a sandwich.
Jenna is with us now. Kia ora, Jenna.
I think we'll leave, Jenna. Thank you for your report, though. That was a great report. Right. Chewy's obviously having computer issues tonight, but that's okay because we've got a pre-recorded conversation coming up right now. I want to get to this conversation tonight because we like on BHN finding new angles and asking new questions. Lucky enough to have Jan Tinetti with us this afternoon, with me this afternoon. And there's a really important question in this conversation. And it's to do with the children and the rights they have to receive the food. And no one else has talked about it yet. And I think it could be something that goes a bit further should this angle be taken. So, hey man, we're going to play this conversation now with Jan, and then we'll come back and get your guys' response to it, and Cheryl will get your response to it because you haven't seen it yet either. And also, I guess then we're going to be talking about Nikki No Boats and the ferries to wrap up the show. So let's play the conversation with Jan now. I want to welcome to the show Labour's spokesperson for education, Jan Tinetti. Jan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me here.
Lovely. Have you been with us before at all, ever? Is this the first time?
No, I haven't. This is first time.
Highlight. This will be the highlight of your month.
I'm a long-time watcher, so it's really good being here.
You're with us today as the spokesperson for education, as we said. I want to talk to you about school lunches. I've sort of come across a thought today, and I guess I'm in the privileged position that I can expand that thought by asking the people in the houses of power what they think about this. So I'll get to that shortly. But the first thing I want to do is play the comments from the Prime Minister this morning on Michael Hosking on News Talk ZB, and then have a little bit of a chat about that. And then I've got a couple of questions for you. So let's see what Mr. Luxon said this morning.
School lunches, do we actually have a problem here, or is this a pile-on from the unions, the teachers and the media to make David Seymour look bad?
Well, I think the bottom line is some of the lunches aren't up to scratch, but Seymour is all across the issue. I've got every confidence he's.
When you say they're not up to scratch, what do you mean?
Good question.
Well, I mean, you get every day we get a story of a particular lunch. There is.
Yeah, but why do we get a story every day? We get a story every day because someone's a whiner, don't we?
Well,
or
yeah, maybe
not.
there's some
Is there a
problems with
genuine...
Or we get it every day because there's problems every day, Mr. Hosking, but we'll get back to that shortly.
lunches, But look, here's the deal. I mean, if you don't like the lunches, actually just go make a Marmite sandwich and put an apple in the bag. And as a parent, I think parents should take responsibility for feeding their own kids. I'd rather the state didn't have to do so. It should be a parental responsibility. But the fact is that kids are actually coming to school with no lunch. I'm not willing to let them go hungry.
Yeah, but this is what I don't get. So you're hearing from teachers going that hungry kids can't learn, correct? Okay, fair enough.
Yep.
And when we do something about it, we still whine some more that the cellophane couldn't get done and I'm hiring too many people to distribute them. And the only sympathy I've ever had is they're late. They should be on time. I get that. Beyond that, you're just bitching. You're moaning.
Yeah.
If you don't want it, don't have it. So, I mean, at what point...
if you don't like it, make a sandwich.
Right, exactly. So at what point does the government go, if you're just going to complain about this, we'll save the money, thanks very much? Or is there an actual problem that Seymour needs to address?
No, there are some lunches that are not up to scratch and some delivery that's not up to scratch. And David and I have talked about it, and he's all over the detail. I have got every confidence he's going to get it sorted. And so he's right to actually keep chasing those issues down and making sure we're getting what we've contracted and the quality of the product, as well as obviously the on-time delivery of it. So that's a reality. But I just say to you, there's always going to be people that are unhappy with school lunches, and I get that. And if you really are unhappy with it, for God's sake, go make a Marmite sandwich and put an apple in a bag just like you and I had.
Peter, so some pretty massive neoliberal sort of Tory, austerity, kind of these terrible welfare queens, they can just make a Marmite sandwich vibes out of that conversation. But how about before we get to some of these questions I've got, what are your thoughts on what the PM said this morning?
I think when I first heard it, I was pretty disgusted. If I'm going to be really, really honest about this, I'm trying not to show my anger, but I guess I can't help that. I am really, really angry. It's almost like you've got somebody there who is the modern day Marie Antoinette. Let them eat cake is basically the modern day, without really knowing and understanding the backgrounds that these young people come from, the fact that it's really hard for them to get food. I don't want to get into the weeds of that, but it's out of their playbook. It's out of their playbook. 30 years ago, just about to the day, Jim Bolger said exactly the same thing to Helen Clark in the House. And we're still having this argument. It's just ridiculous. We know that kids learn best when they're fed well. We know that when their nutrition is great, they're in their optimum space for learning. So why aren't we doing something about it? Well, we did. Our government put in the lunch program. I'm really proud of the work that happened there. But I'm absolutely devastated to see the heart and soul being ripped out of it and just being discarded and then being said, oh, it's up to parents anyway. It's just frustrating.
Yeah, I feel your frustration. What we often do here, Jan, is we say for the government, we will hold them to the standard they held you guys to, which I think is fair, or we will hold them to the standards they set for themselves. And when it comes to school lunches, this was the day it was released. These are the standards they set for. No, we had nothing to do with this. Like, we didn't force these pictures on you guys. This is the standard they had for themselves. There's some butter chicken and some rice, and it looks, it's fine. And there's more of them there. And then there's going to be a lovely picture there of some kind of muesli slice, yum. And of course, we've got fruit and we've got yogurt. And of course, all I need to do is Google school lunches NZ. So that's their standard for themselves. Their standard for themselves. Nothing more, nothing less. And this is what they're delivering.
Yeah.
And this is what they're delivering. And this is what they're delivering. So I think it's completely appropriate that we hold them to the standard they set for themselves, which is all we're trying to do here today.
Yeah. And I'm going to say this. I want this to be successful. I don't want to see it falling over. I know the difference it makes for young people. Look, if he could do it and do it well, I'd be the first one to say, good on you. Let's do bipartisan agreement around this, but it's not. And I know, as someone who oversaw that as the former minister, that it was going right to the stretch as it was. to cut that heart and soul out of it. I knew it was going to be really, really difficult, and it's just proving that way. But what frustrates me is he will not take responsibility for it. He will not say, yeah, we're getting it wrong, we need to go back and rethink. It's always, the previous government didn't fund it. The previous government, a whole lot of rubbish around it, because he doesn't want it to work. He wants it to fail.
I also think, a little piece of advice for you guys, as arrogant as that sounds coming from a bullfed podcaster, these are not $3 meals, because remember, this is now a private company. So how much profit of that $3 goes into their pocket? So these are $1.50 meals, dollar meals. Yeah. These are $2 meals. They keep, and when you had all the kind of groups in the community with mums coming in to help, that was all voluntary work. They were kind of $3 to $4 meals. Now they're dollar meals or $1.50 meals. I think we have to continually remind them of that as well. And it's interesting when you say he won't take responsibility. In that conversation with Mike Hosking, he said they're not up to scratch. Well, fix them. He said we're getting complaints every day. Well, because we've just shown you the kind of food. I still challenge any reporter that's got access to the Prime Minister to hold some of those pictures in front of him and say, could you please identify this meal? Like, could you just tell us what it is? That's all. Because if the Prime Minister can't tell us what it is, that's probably a sign that it is not, quote, up to scratch. And then I said, as that kind of austere Tory, if they don't like it, they can just make it themselves. It's disgusting. Hey, I want to move very quickly, though, into a part of the conversation that I've heard no one talk about yet. And I'm really intrigued by this. I could be way off base. And that's why nobody's asked these questions, because they're just wrong. I've done a bit of research today on our Human Rights Commission. In and under our Human Rights Commission, there is the right to food. That's a right, as says the Human Rights Commission. Under the right to food, it's got the children and their right to food. It says this: children are especially vulnerable to the lack of adequate food. And by the way, for those listening on the audio podcast, this is the New Zealand Human Rights Commission. Because if you look at international ones, it talks sometimes about issues that you'd more see in a third world country. But this is the New Zealand Human Rights Commission. Children are especially vulnerable to lack of adequate food, as they need nutritious and safe food to grow. If children and their families are unable to get adequate food, support should be provided, e.g., through school lunches. Food made available through such support should, and then there's a link going off to meet the dietary needs of children. That goes off to the United Nations Human Rights article. Within there is a sector that talks about the rights of children, and amongst other things, it says this: if children and their families are unable to enjoy the right to food by the means at their disposal, support should be provided, for instance, through school meal programs or food aid. We go back to the New Zealand Human Rights Commission, and this write-up on children and the right for food says, the Convention on the Rights of the Child protects the children's right to food in the context of the right to life, survival and development, to health, to nutrition, and to an adequate standard of living. So, Jan, my question is it possible that this government are breaching the rights of these children, the human rights of these children, by not delivering on any of those requirements as per the Human Rights Act 1993?
It is absolutely possible, and it is certainly something that needs to be investigated further. The whole reason why the lunch program was started in the first place was because food insecurity was so great going through the COVID times, and government policy can impact upon that, and government policy can make those sorts of areas that are so hard for people better. And that's why the healthy free lunch school program was so important as part of reducing food insecurity. What we're seeing now is we're seeing cost of living really impacting on people, and to minimise the healthy lunch program is a huge part of the growing food insecurity that many of us are seeing out in our communities. So I absolutely believe that there is a fundamental right, as you've pointed out, through the documentation that exists and the acts of Parliament that exist there now, for young people, children, to have food and to have food security. So you are spot on that this needs to be investigated further.
And I guess I know what some of the comeback will be. The comeback will be, well, they are providing food, so they can tick that box. But are they providing food which meets, quote, the dietary needs of children? So if it doesn't tick that box, then they seem to be in breach of these children's human rights. And I guess to test it, someone needs to lay a complaint with the Human Rights Commission. I guess we've got people watching right now, maybe people within Parliament. That would be the way to test this, wouldn't you think?
Absolutely. It's not something I've personally thought about up until now, but it's something I can look into. But you've got a whole lot of people that you are now appealing to who I know, because I get emails from the same people telling me about these things. I know that that's something that they will investigate as well.
That is the Labour spokesperson for education, Jan Tinetti. Jan, thanks so much for joining us for the first time tonight. Love to have you back.
Thank you. Love to be back.
Alrighty, Chewy. I told you what we were going to talk about tonight. I gave you a call and laid it out for you. So that's the first time you've seen it. What are your thoughts? Mic's on. Mic's on. Your mic's not on.
Oh, it was on the whole time. I was tricking you. I think it's a fantastic idea. I'm really, really interested to see how it will play out.
Yeah.
And I really think that, like, I've seen a lot of comments online today, the usual sort of comments that piss me off whenever we're talking about feeding children. The Prime Minister has kicked it off, with his little look at how relatable comment I am. Maybe they should have a sandwich and an apple like you and I have, Mike Hosking. Do we really believe that Luxon has a little lunchbox with a little sandwich and a piece of fruit in it? Do we really believe that that's how he does this day? Is this another one of these unbelievable statements that the Prime Minister is going to pull out of his asshole to make him look more relatable? It is just ridiculous. We have a responsibility. There are so many reasons to do this. There are so many studies that show that children that eat properly learn better. Children that learn better end up going on to further education, have less developmental problems, have less interactions with the law, all of that sort of thing. You want to break the cycle of poverty? Here's a really economical way the state can actually do something. And that is just to feed kids at school, like so many developed countries around the world do, as a matter of course. Some of them do it better than others, but they fucking do it. And a lot of them are countries that Luxon loves to compare us to. So I don't see why this is controversial. We've even had people in our chat today going, oh, we need to end school lunches. My mum was able to give me a lunch every day. Guess what? I didn't come from a particularly wealthy family, but I don't think we were on the edge of poverty. But there were days that I didn't go to school with lunch. And when it's like the whole issue with these meals turning up late, burnt, repetitive, not nutritious, taste yucky, all of these things, right? If you know your school is going to provide or is supposed to provide your child lunch, why would you make them a backup lunch? Why would you do it? So the option that Luxon's talking about is, okay, everybody needs to buy a backup lunch in case this big multinational corporation that we gave the tender to fucks this up somehow that they can eat. Or, alternatively, they're hungry all day. What a shit choice that is.
And look, just remember, and I think what we've discovered through this process is that argument of, well, the parents can just do it. It's acknowledged very clearly. If children and their families are unable to get adequate food, support should be provided easier through school meals. It's ironic that it says school meals. It's exactly what we're talking about. It's the Human Rights Commission. It's the New Zealand situation acknowledging there that not everyone can do that. I'd actually be really interested. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. Apples are $5-6 a kilo. I wonder what average number of children at school. I don't know, 2.5. So what's what's a Marmite sandwich and 2 apples actually end up costing every day? I wouldn't be surprised if it was more than $3 per day. So,
Pat,
yeah. Yep.
I make my lunch every day. And it is a sandwich, and it is some yogurt, and it's a piece of fruit, and it's a muesli bar or something. It is more than $3 a day.
Mm.
Like there are so many reasons to do this properly, right? And my concern is that there's going to be so much faffing about with this that the argument is, see, it's all too hard. So there's no point in doing it. There's too much waste. The kids don't like the meals. Everybody's having a whinge. Fuck you.
Well, but hang on. But the thing is, they can't. They can't not do it. This is the point that I was going to say. They can't not do it. It says very clearly, if the children and their families are unable to get adequate food, support should be provided through school meals, e.g. school meals. So actually, people, and I actually agree with the concept, especially Seymour. And mind you, did you pick up the words from Luxon's? He literally said that government shouldn't be having to do this, but we are. So he's already indicating that in an ideal world, government wouldn't be doing this. It's absolutely Seymour's bag. But I'm sorry, the Human Rights Commission says you have to do it. You can't just ignore it. So actually that conversation around, even if they're trying to break it to get rid of it, it's moot because they have to do it. Or they have to pay families more, give the lower people maybe the tax breaks to give them the way to get to that adequate food. Because you have to do it. It's the law.
Yeah, my position is all students should have access to a meal at school. A, because it is good for the country, first and foremost, right at the top of the bill. It is good for our society. It is good for the growth of our young people. It leads to better outcomes for them in their later life. There is an obligation. There's an obligation. And anybody that is saying that it's down to the parents, is that your answer for a hungry child? That if a hungry child came up to you and said, I haven't eaten, you go, well, take it out with your mum. What a heartless person you are.
Mm.
Like, there are so many reasons. But what you're saying, Pat, is absolutely true. But I would expand it even further. All students should have school meals.
Yeah.
The benefit comes at scale. It removes the stigma of you being a poor kid that needs a school meal.
Mm.
It puts everybody, like this government loves to talk about everybody's the same. Well, here's something that you could do. This government loves to say that they're laser focused on the cost of living. Well, here's one way that you can affect that. You can make it easier for families. Like there's no downside to doing this properly. So why are these guys making such a fucking pig's ear of it and telling us that it's gourmet?
Yeah. And look, I think that conversation, especially the part about the human rights violations, is pretty important. So just so you know, that conversation is going to go live on my Twitter feed in about 12 minutes. So if you follow me on Twitter, that end clip talking about the potential human rights violations is going to be on my Twitter feed in 12 minutes from now, whilst we're still on the show. So if you follow me on Twitter, get it around there. I'm connecting it to all the news agencies and say, hey guys, maybe you could ask the Prime Minister about this. Maybe this would be something to follow up with the Prime Minister about. And I think that, you know, we, the grassroots, we, the community here, can push this push this topic, because I think it deserves to be pushed. Because at the moment, they've got an answer for everything. How about the answer for breach of human rights of the kids around food and food availability, adequate food? All right.
Now, Pat, the conversation is not just going to be on Twitter, is it? It's going to be on Blue Sky. It's going to be on Facebook.
I can't put the link on Blue Sky or the clip, because it only takes 16 videos, but it's going to be on YouTube.
But we're going to be talking about, and then we're going to be linking to them.
Yes, it'll be linked to all the other places as well. It's just that it was I didn't have a lot of time to get it set up, so it's gone on Twitter. Because, you know, Twitter's the healthiest space to have conversations. We know that, Chewy. Because I care found use of leftover school lunches, and to save money, closed Bellamy ministers can use the frozen meals at any time of the day. Yep, there you go. Just put them in a big freezer on the 9th floor and let ministers come and take them if they want. Kathy says something interesting. If they have a contract, they can break it. Yeah, government, you can break that contract. They will be well outside their remit. I almost guarantee it. It's in the ballot from Linda McGregor from Little Bread Loaf. In order on her margin to cover all costs at $3, including GST, cost of the food cannot exceed 80 cents a meal. There you go.
Jesus.
SAC Compass, bring back local businesses, says Wooming. Arvid says, quote, confidence is not competence, Mr. Luxon. Caleb says, why is no one asking them why their lunch program has issues when the last one by Labor didn't? Yeah, so it's having issues. So yeah, there weren't these issues in the last lot, the one you were criticizing. Why is there in this one?
Hey guys, force that line of questioning on them. Because if the only criticism of Labor's lunch food program was that it was expensive, not that it was bad. Oh, and there was the criticism that it was wasteful, which was also bullshit. But does the laundry list of things that has gone wrong with this, again, Compass and the other providers, they were picked because this is their industry, right?
Yeah.
So that you'd think that they'd have basic level of competency of having the meals to not deliver the same meals again and again and again, to deliver the meals on time, not too hot, not too cold, not too full of microplastics. All of these just basic levels of you're a food company, you should have this shit on lock. That's why we're going with you, because you've got the experience and the skills. We haven't seen the experience. We haven't seen the skills. We haven't seen the lack of wastage. We haven't seen value for money. Why the fuck have they still got the contract? And why the fuck is the minister in charge of this shit show still in charge of anything?
Kiwi Bird says, well, let them eat melted plastic. Yeah, I guess that's fair as well. Wooming says, school lunches for all kids is an investment into our future. It is a no-brainer. Anyone who wants to get rid of school lunches are selfish assholes. And Ian says, damn, really late fee. And finally, Bill says, can we talk about online tests? The online tests. I'm not quite sure what that references to. Do you have any idea? The online tests?
No, I don't know what that is.
Well, thank you for your super chat anyway, Bill. We appreciate it. All right, let's move into our last conversation for today, because it's been sort of an avalanche of throwback stories to this government, because the school lunches has been going on for a year. And one of the other things that's been going on for a weddy long time is...
Hey, Pat?
Yes.
Sorry, before you push play on this, I just want to put this in people's minds.
Okay.
What if Luxon's egregious marmite conversation that has dominated the news cycle today is a dead cat tactic for this story?
Okay. There's a very good rundown at the start of the story with Simon Dallow talking to the timeline so far of the iRex. We found out today that the government has set aside $300 million for the break fee. Now, remember, it's a bit hard here to figure out exactly how much the ferries were going to cost, because they've included the costs of the wharves in that. But originally, Chewy, I think the ferries were about $700 million. So if that's still the accurate number as to what they were at the end, that means they're basically paying for half of the ferry cost to break all the contracts, although the contracts are including breaking ones with the people making the wharfs. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to break those contracts with the wharf, the people who are building the wharfs. They're going to take their $50 million out of that, and then the government's going to employ them to build new wharves for the new ferries. It's a bit like when a government lets go of a whole bunch of staff, they get their severance pay, they get their holiday pay, they get a big lump sum, and then they come back as a contractor and they charge them twice as much. That'll be what happens next. So let's get to the story tonight about where we are with the break fee and iRex and where we are with the ferries full stop.
Newly released documents show the government put aside $300 million to cover the break fees for all the abandoned mega ferry project. Just the latest revelation in the long-running saga.
Not mega ferries.
In 2018, the plans put forward for 2 large rail-enabled ferries with an estimated cost of $775 million. Costs keep rising. By June 2021, up to $1.4 billion, mainly on planned infrastructure.
That word mainly is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Because if they say mainly, that means sort of the majority. Because you don't go like, well, I went out for dinner tonight. Mainly most of the cost was in beer. If you only spend $1 on beer and $20 on the actual meal, mainly implies that's the biggest chunk of the pie, which is not costs going to Hyundai. It's local infrastructure.
The actual ships. Later that month, Kiwi Rail signs a fixed price contract with South Korean company Hyundai Mipo for 2 mega ferries at a price of $551 million.
So the ferries have a fixed price. Signed a contract, fixed price, $500 million.
This is why everybody said it was such a good deal.
Yep. Break fee, $300 million. 2 ferries, $551 million. Break fee, $300 million. Now, yes, it does include the infrastructure, but remember, we have builders and labourers and hammer hands and all these people fleeing this country at the moment because the government is cancelling Kāinga orders, cancelling all their building, and things like the infrastructure in the ports is being cancelled as well. So, yeah, would have cost more to get the wharves done as well. But you would have got those people through this current economic downturn, and they'd be here in 2 years to keep working, which they won't be now. Wouldn't surprise me. It's very funny. It wouldn't surprise me if they struggle to find a company or a group to actually build the new wharves that they're going to need because they've all left. Last one out of New Zealand, turn the lights off. Remember that? That was Muldoon, I think, from memory. All right, we'll keep going.
But by February 2023, the project costs escalate significantly to $2.6 billion. In November, the incoming government's advised of a further increase to $3 billion. The government ditches the iRex project.
So that implies it's $2.5 billion on infrastructure and half a billion on ferries because there's a fixed price. So that means the wharves, the infrastructure to house the ferries, all of that, $2.5 billion. I think we could probably look up some roading infrastructure that's around the $3 billion cost at the moment that this government happily signed on to. But the infrastructure for the ferries,
$64 billion.
Yeah. But $2.5 billion for the state highway one that is the Cook Strait, not worth $2.5 billion to build that infrastructure.
A month later, in the new year, a ministerial advisory group's established to provide advice on the ferries. 4 months later, it reports back to the government recommending 2 medium-sized roll-on, roll-off ferries. Its findings weren't released publicly. And in December, it's back to the drawing board. Winston Peters is named Minister for Rail.
So just remember, back to the drawing board means we're back at the start. So since 2018, 6 years later, because of these guys, we're back at the start. I don't know about you, but everything I've heard about building and building costs has gone up exponentially since 6 years ago. So how they think they're going to get a cheaper deal for a worse product these days, I have no idea.
Neither do they, Pat. Yeah. Neither do they.
I guess
it's amazing.
It's amazing.
The new company to be set up to deliver the ferries. Here's Jessica Roden with the latest.
When the mega ferries were axed, the plan ahead sounded simple.
The Ferrari is not the only car in the garage. Let's look and see if we can get some better value options.
What's really important with this, and we obviously, hauled National over the coals for this, but listening to it again now, let's look and see if we can get some better value. Important. Let's look and see. Let's look and see means we don't have a plan. Again, let's look and see means we don't have a replacement plan. Just confirming it on day one.
Let's look and see if we can get some better value options. The Toyota.
Let's look and see.
We can't.
Yeah, and that's the question, Chewy. What if we can't? Looks like we can't. We can't.
Kayaks.
the reliable option.
Cabinet brought in experts and today their advice was finally released. The Ministerial Advisory Group initially suggested last February that KiwiRail try to renegotiate the contract with Hyundai to get them to build smaller ships that weren't rail enabled. The Finance Minister says that didn't work out.
When we then tried to pursue that, the option that came back was very expensive.
What? Okay. Why do you think it was expensive, Nikki No Boats? By the way, bhnshop.nz, I would like to see an uptick on Nikki No Boats merch tonight, because 6 years after the original quote and locking in a price of building has gone through the roof. Price of infrastructure has gone through the roof. Price of labour has gone through the roof. So yes, it was very expensive. Probably what you're not telling us is that it was going to cost you more than the bigger ferries, because that was a good deal, $500 million for those two. You might be paying $500 million, $750 million now for two smaller ones, and it's because the price of everything has gone through the roof, Chewy.
What I would like to know, and what is not mentioned in that piece of camera by Nicola there, is before we got the new price and worked out that it was too expensive, how long did it take for the people at Hyundai to stop laughing? Like, was it 10 minutes, 20 minutes? Did you have to break for lunch? They were just talking and just laughing at the fact that we cancelled a ridiculously good deal via text on a whim because it was done by Team Red. And you didn't like that, and you had no other plan. We've had almost 2 years, and the best option is to go back to the people that you fucked around and said, hey, you gave us a good deal last time for big boats. You're going to give us a great deal for smaller boats, right? And then the laughing, the never-ending laughing, and the scary number put forward. Because you fucked someone around. You fucked one of the world's best shipyards that is not exactly going begging for work. You fucked them around because you wanted to be Billy Big Balls. I'm better than Labour.
But it's even if Hyundai, I agree with you. Hyundai might have got all vindictive, of course. But even if they didn't, and so now for $500 million, well, you can have one ferry at today's prices. Or we can build you two ferries that are about 2/3 the size, but it's going to cost you twice as much because that's today's prices. The cheapest time to build something was yesterday, right? The cheapest time to build anything is yesterday. Tomorrow's more expensive than today. Now, when you start talking about hundreds of millions of dollars and an 8 to 10 year gap, what the fuck do you expect? Let's keep going.
$300 million has been put aside to deal with the repercussions of breaking that contract.
The break fee is not just for the ferries, it's for the infrastructure that's being built around it as well. So it's much less.
Which we'll still have to build even for smaller ones. We know that already. That's still going to be a cost.
Than you say.
But Minister Peters did meet with Hyundai in South Korea last week and seems optimistic a new deal could be on the cards.
We had a very frank discussion. We know.
I wonder if that frank discussion started with, guys, I know my colleagues are fucking idiots and they've made a mistake. Can we just agree that the guys I've come away from in New Zealand are morons? Can we start there? I acknowledge that. Now, please, can you give me a break so at least I can go back and hold my head up high? If it didn't start like that, I don't imagine much is going to happen. I don't imagine.
That they are seriously interested.
It's another humiliation for Nicola Willis. She shouldn't have rushed and cancelled the new inter-island ferry contract before figuring out what the government was going to do instead.
The advisory group also said second-hand ships are not an option. It recommended a contract for new ferries be signed by last October at the latest. A new company should be set up and eventually run the inter-islander service.
We screamed past that by last October. We're now in March, October, November, December, January, February. So they should have had it done by 6 months ago, almost to the day.
This is going very well.
Rather than KiwiRail. And the only way the Crown can reduce the safety and reliability issues currently is by replacing the ferries ASAP. Ministers
Meaning the current ferries are no longer fit for purpose and need to be gone.
received the last of these independent reports in June. And while they have been publicly released today, large sections have been redacted. For example, the companies other than Hyundai, which have been contacted about building the new ships, have been withheld. One thing is clear, the advisors recommended roll-on, roll-off ferries. Rail freight can be lifted onto them, but trains can't drive on.
Now, remember what that means as well for the South Island is the South Island cannot receive rail anymore. Now, when I say rail, I mean the rails. Only trains can carry the rails that make the rails that the trains run on. So if we don't have a roll-on, roll-off, then they have to actually invent a whole new way, which should go into the costings, right? Because that's a part of it, of how the South Island will get delivered its rail, the things we need for rail, because you won't be able to do it on the ferry anymore. So however that now has to happen, whether it's by getting on boats and bringing them around or having a purpose-built boat now, that has to be included in the costings of these new ferries we're going to get.
That's almost a red herring. We think the bigger issue is the risk of reducing the number of vessels from Inter-Islander's current 3 vessels down to 2.
Minister Peters, though, is a long-time advocate for rail-enabled ferries.
I told you we're looking at every option, not just what I inherited.
He says hold fire, he'll have more to say.
I wonder if he means inherited from Labor or inherited from Nikki. I'm assuming he means probably inherited from both with equal disdain for Mr. Peters.
Soon.
We were promised the framework for the future deal by the end of March. Yes, you'll get the information that you need.
What the country really needs, some new ferries, and it's still not clear when that'll happen. Jessica Roden, One News.
Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, and as I said that, I wonder if Winston's disdain was equally placed between Labor and Nikki No Boats. I don't mean Labor deserved it. Labor got a freaking awesome deal, and but you know, Winston being Winston. Caleb says 2021 was when ships were being sunk as they were too expensive to maintain with COVID. It was a once in a lifetime opportunity for discounted ships. Chewy, your thoughts, man?
I've got so many thoughts. We knew that this was coming. We have been correct on this all the way through. Everybody that we have spoken to about it has been correct all the way through. Bear in mind, people, we would have been getting the first iRex ferry January of next year. The second one, October of next year. That's what they've flushed. Anything that happens between now and whatever half-assed ferry we end up getting is on Nicola. Solely on Nicola. I think if Simon Dello is going to sit there and call the iRex ferries mega ferries every opportunity he gets, the whatever ferries we get need to be called the half-assed ferries. Because the iRex weren't mega ferries. They were just bigger because in 30 plus years New Zealand has got bigger. We handle more freight. We have more population. Getting bigger ferries was appropriate because you are trying to factor in the growth as well. If we get ferries that are only marginally bigger than what we've got now, then we are locking in the decisions made 30 years ago for another 30 years. 60 years of no growth. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? And over that span, like when they're saying, hey, look, the costs have ballooned. Yeah, they did for lots of like obvious reasons. It wasn't people building mansions with it. It was just that costs went up. But when you're talking about port and freight handling facilities and you were building them for climate change and earthquake disaster resilience, that is 100-year infrastructure, or let's be real cautious, 50-year infrastructure. So who cares if it goes up $1 billion if you're spreading the cost out over 50 years? It's like having a house with a leaking roof. Like, it doesn't matter if the costs go up. You need to do it. Your roof is leaking. And if you don't do it, the leak gets worse and it damages more things, and it's going to cost more anyway. Just do it. This was such a political hack job decision made from a knee jerk with no backup plan. We've had almost 2 years of dicking around. Like, these guys should be crucified for this level of just sheer bloody-minded incompetence in the face of all expert opinion, all advice, and, dare I say it, common fucking sense. This is a debacle that is going to be baked into our infrastructure for the next 30, 40 years.
100. And still, when we get those, it'll be under hopefully a different government. When some of those little baby ships finally get delivered, we gotta have the public be able to vote on the names of them, like the famous Boaty McBoatface. Because I'm still thinking about the Christopher Luxon and the Nicky No boats, because every time you're on that ferry being tossed about in that strait because they're not fit for purpose like the other ones would have been. You want to remember who put you on them. Just think about us, Chewy. If we get to go to Waitangi next year, if we do the same thing as we did this year, we could have been literally on that ferry going across the strait, singing the praises of this government for nailing it down and getting it finished off, the one that the Labor guy started. But oh no! In fact, I think they're going to be down a ferry. Is it the end of this year or the end of next year? One of the ferries is no longer going to be operational.
Like, it's just so incompetent. Like the double and triple handling on freight. Like, if they were both roll on, roll off, like the trains would just go on, no worries at all. You're not handling that stock. The fact that we're going down to 2 boats isn't as much as an issue because of the turnaround of loading the ship up and sending it off again. When we spoke to someone from the Maritime Union, and they were saying, well, look, like having to double handle that freight adds 3 hours onto the turnaround. So the fact that we're going down from 3 ferries to 2 and adding 3 hours to loading it on each side of the journey, none of this is good. There isn't an upside here. I don't understand why this is allowed to happen. It is so incompetent.
Chewy, though, you've forgotten something, man. You know, the government's going to change the speed limits around schools. So that's going to change. What was the number? Something like two minutes and 40 seconds between Auckland and Wellington. So, you know, it'll probably equal out to be the same. Sure.
Like changing those speed limits was going to unlock the true productivity potential of our entire country, but absolutely chopping the South Island off at its knees. Certainly that shouldn't have any major effect.
None whatsoever.
I mean, I know I've been screaming about it ever since it happened, but why has this been allowed to fade into the background and we only get these updates? So now we got to wait till the end of March. The Winnie P announces whatever half-assed ferry we're ended up with. Like, we're going to have to name them as well. So I don't know. It's nice that they have Māori names. So I guess we need the Māori translation for left cheek and right cheek. Just call the ferries that. But that doesn't work either, because that's the full ass. It's only the half ass.
Upper cheek and lower cheek. Upper right, lower right.
Yeah.
We'll work on it. We'll
brainstorm.
We'll brainstorm. We'll do it. I'm sure we'll do it. Some chats that are coming because I care. 2.4 billion tax cuts for landlords or ferries. Yep, we're getting it. Worming final cost will be 5 billion plus. We said it from the start. This whole ridiculous, we've said this since day one. The whole ridiculous, brand new Ferrari, secondhand Corolla. We've said it from the start. They're going to end up paying the price of a brand new Ferrari for a secondhand Corolla in the
deal of the century.
Yeah, that'll end up be what ends up happening.
Whatever price we get told, and we bear in mind we might not get told for ages because it'll be commercially sensitive, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But whatever price they end up turning around on, we have to automatically add another $300 million
that's it.
on top of that price.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Arvin says it's hard work taking the fucking piss. And Peter says, did Elon practice with our government before Doge? Or as Francesca Fiorenteri calls it, doggy. Yeah. Now, a couple of quick things, team. Right now, as we speak to you, on my Twitter feed is the end of that conversation we had with Jan Tinetti. There's already people sharing it around. If you're involved with the news media and you get caught up with it, talk to the Prime Minister tomorrow. Mr. Hosking, ask him if it's a breach of the children's human rights and how can it not be once we go through all the information there. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I promised I'd show you this. There you go. There's a new sticker that we printed out today for the first time. We are the grassroots. Some people didn't like that very much, but I do. And if you don't like it, you don't have to buy it. So there's actually been some people buying merch tonight as well, the Nicky No Bites. I'll throw in the new sticker for all of March. Oh my gosh, it's only the 4th day. That's a stupid thing to say out loud. I'll throw the new sticker in with any purchase of a hoodie or with any purchase of a hoodie or a t-shirt or a multi-pack of the stickers. I'll put one of those in there as well. And next month we'll be looking at how we incorporate them more. So free grassroots stickers for purchases other than for the single sticker purchases. Multi-packs, t-shirts, hoodies, I'll throw one of those in there as well. That's pretty much me, Chewy.
I've got one other important piece of news to bring to the group. Look at this faux giraffe.
Nickelback voice. Look at this faux giraffe. I got it. Took me a second. I got it though.
Just in case people were taking us as a serious news commentary show.
No, we're not that.
We're too chaotic for that. The other thing that I would like to mention, because of its timeliness, I have spoken about this YouTube channel a couple of times. I was just talking about it on Blue Sky as well. The channel Perun, that is Perun, also known as Aussie PowerPoint Man, has released his latest video is the question, can Europe defend itself without the US? So considering about what's going on in the moment, if you want a spectacular piece of analysis with my favorite thing, a shit ton of historical context, it's an excellent one. You should hunt it out.
That's obviously one of the probably the biggest story in the world at the moment, that Trump has said no to Ukraine, no more funding. It also means the funding that's already been allocated that's not in Ukraine is being pulled as well. So if there is equipment in bordering countries, they're not allowed that. If there's equipment in the US, they're not allowed that. So the only thing that America is giving Ukraine now is stuff that's already in the borders, in the land that is Ukraine. So this is horrific, and I wouldn't be surprised if you saw a massive increase in the next week from Putin going in there.
It's also illegal what he's doing, because he's doing it without congressional approval or anything like that. So all of this aid that is ready to go, that was all approved. So it's like no taxi backsies. But he's going to do it anyway, because there isn't anything strong enough to stand up to him in the States at the moment. I have been bouncing around a lot of commentators, and there's so many of them that don't realize how cooked they are, because he stacked the Supreme Court. He has law enforcement, and nobody in the Senate or Congress is doing enough to stop him.
Yeah.
This is a death spiral.
All right. Chad asked a question, which I'm happy to answer. Have you considered posting during work hours, e.g. just before lunch, to improve reach? We started the show off. We had our 3-year anniversary on Friday. When I started the show off 3 years ago, it was at 11 a.m. And then I think I moved it to midday to get the lunchtime crowd. And then I think we did it for a while. Were you and me doing it at 10 p.m.? I get the sense we're doing it at 10 p.m. And then we went, that's too late.
We did it super late.
Yeah, we've moved
it around a bit. I think we even tried a wee while starting it at 8, which was just way too early as well. So yeah, I seem to remember 8 because it was always like a mad scramble to get home from work and eat and fucking work out what we're doing.
And the answer to your question is, with growth comes more opportunities. And if we continue to grow, we are able to figure out financially how to do like a second show in a day. Maybe there could be multiple shows, and maybe there could be another team doing a daytime one, and there could be a team doing a nighttime one. But, you know, anything's possible. All things are possible, in fact, is what they say, I think. I don't know if they say that or not, Chewy. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. And look, on that Trump thing, I'm sure we probably... Well, there's a very good chance we might touch on that tomorrow night and see where we're up to then as well. So there you go. Thanks for the show tonight, guys. I feel like it's been a huge one. I've really enjoyed you. Pass all that information around. Yeah, it's been good.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have their hand out for rewards, while the many have to work at what they can't afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting peas from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a warpath to run, linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A and a self and a higher in mind. All heavily, either this way or that, and will be analyzed by what you and Pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's big hairy news.
All right, guys, that's us for tonight. Thanks to Ann Daniels. Thanks to Jan Tinetti joining us tonight to talk about the topics of the day. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for being part of our Patreon if you're scrolling through the screen right now. And thank you just for watching. Make sure you share that stuff around tomorrow. It's a big story, and we could get traction with it. So this is where you get to be the advocates and say, hey, those guys on BHN, they had a good thought last night, and get it out there. But that's it for me, Chewy.
That's it for me. I would also encourage you, our army of flying monkeys, to bombard this in every comment section that's out there as the government breaching human rights by not feeding children.
It's a good headline. No matter what you say about it, it's a pretty good headline. You got to give it that. All right, guys. Bless you lots. We'll see you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Hooroo, team.
Cheers, fam.